and he announces, I haven't even looked at my hand before back raise 5 betting 500. Okay, this is good news.
Hey YouTube.
Welcome back to the vlog, everyone. We're going to yet another Melbourne home game tonight. It's one we've been to plenty of times at this point with the PLO double ball bomb pots. I went to the game last week and I didn't play many interesting hands because I got stacked twice in PLO double ball bomb pots, so ended up losing 1,500. Didn't make for a great vlog, but we're going back tonight looking for a bit of redemption and hopefully to run a bit better than we did at previous game. So without any further ado, let's get in the action. So got into the game at about 8 PM, ended up buying in for 1,000. Initially we agreed to play 5-5, but then 5-5 became 1-3-6 and then became 5-5-10 after that. So blinds are a bit all over the place this session and there's plenty of interesting hands to get into. So without further ado, let's get in the first hand. So very first hand is a straight 5-5, and as you can see we've got a brand new table with beautiful flashing LED lights. Let's go, that's going to look awesome on the vlog. So G-Man in the cutoff opens to 20, then I'm in the small blind with pocket queens. I go ahead and 3-bet it to 80, then the action's back round to the small blind, who throws in the call. The one thing I will say about my 3-bet sizing here is probably could go a bit bigger when we're over 200 big blinds effective. Maybe something like 90 or even 100 will make more sense. So it heads up to a flop of King 7-4 with 2 diamonds. I go ahead and check it over to my opponent. I could potentially see c-betting on this board, particularly when I do have the Queen of Diamonds, but checking it over to a loose aggressive opponent is probably going to be a better way for me to make EV with this hand and mix in a check call. So I go ahead and check it over to the opponent. They go ahead and bet 90. Pretty easy call here. We checked it over to the opponent to induce bluffs, so we don't really have any other play but to call. I chuck it in and then we're heads up to a turn, which is the 2 of clubs, putting out backdoor clubs. I check it over to the opponent again, and then they go ahead and bet 245. So definitely have sized up their bet a bit, and I am very concerned that they could have a bunch of hands like King Queen offsuit, King 10 suited, maybe even King 9 suited would make a lot of sense. Having said that though, there are a lot of draws we beat, any diamonds, even though we do block them, but backdoor clubs would make sense as well. Like even if my opponent stabbed the flop with a 9-8 of clubs, I wouldn't be that surprised. So I give them credit for a lot of bluffs in their range. When we do have a showdown value hand like pocket queens, I think we can't go anywhere just yet. So I throw in the call, and then we're still heads up to the river, which is the 8 of clubs. So pretty bad river. Not only does the backdoor flush get in, but we also lose to 5-6, which was a pretty obvious open-ended straight draw. So I check it over to the opponent one final time, and then they're in the tank, maybe like 20 seconds, before ripping it all in for 565. Whew. Pretty gross spot here for queens. I did really like calling on the flop and on the turn because I do think my opponent has a lot of draws and particularly a lot of just airball stabs on the flop. Not so much on this river. Like I said, 6-5 gets there, backdoor clubs gets there, and it's still somewhat possible my opponent is just going for thin value with a king queen, with a king 10, knowing that I'm not going to have a lot of really strong kings in my range, having taken this line. So I really do give them credit for a lot of strong value hands. Plus I'm blocking backdoor clubs without having the Queen of Diamonds in our hands, makes this one of the worst pocket queens to potentially call with. So I end up throwing my hand in the mark. Happy with this decision overall. I think if I had the Queen of Clubs, that would definitely make for a better defend. The next hand's a 1-3-6 and I'm under the gun with pocket jacks. I go ahead and raise it up to 15. Then I get a call from the small blind, who was the same villain from the previous hand. The G-Man, he throws in the call, as does Leon in the straddle. So we're 3 different ways to a flop of 10-10-5 rainbow. The action checks to me in position here with a hand as strong as pocket jacks. I definitely want to go ahead and bet for value. Maybe mix in a bit of equity denial against king high and ace high type hands. Get called here by basically one pair hands that are worse, that'll probably be scared off on later streets. I go ahead and c-bet 25, small blind folds, and then the straddle check raises me to 50. Pretty concerned with the min click check raise. It's usually pretty strong and my opponent definitely has a bunch of 10x in their range. But if my read on that's wrong, the price I'm getting to call here is so good. I just can't be giving it up. Maybe they're protection raising 5x or pocket 7s. So I throw in the call and then we're heads up to a turn, which is the 6 of spades. The opponent checks it over to me and definitely going to go ahead and check back here. Still concerned that my opponent has a 10x, and even if they do have a 5x, they might end up folding knowing I'm going to have a lot of overpairs in my range. So I check it back, and the river is the 5 of spades. This is a really bad river. I thought my opponent's range on the flop was potentially a 10x or a 5x with a few pocket pairs mixed in there. Then the opponent goes ahead and bets a 50. So I'm getting 4-1 on a call, and I only need to be good 20% of the time here. The problem is I think my opponent's range has a bunch of 10x and a bunch of 5x, and I really don't think that they're going to use this small of a sizing with those pocket pairs, like pocket sixes, which is actually a full house now, or even pocket sevens or pocket eights. So despite the price I'm getting, really should be folding here. Just do not think I'm good 20% of the time. I end up getting too tempted though with a small bet and throw in the call, and then my opponent shows me 10-4 of hearts. So there you go, they did end up flopping trips on us like I thought that was potentially the case, and yeah, really disappointed that I didn't end up folding this hand on the river, to be honest. Next hand's another 1-3-6, and this time we got the button bounty. It's back, and Leon goes ahead and limps the cutoff, and then I'm on the button with king 9 of diamonds. I go ahead and ISO raise it to 30. Definitely going to want to ISO raise this hand when we've got the extra incentive of the button bounty. I make it 30, then G-Man calls in the straddle, as does the limper. So we're 3 ways to a flop of 6-5 deuce with 2 diamonds. The action checks to me, and I decide to check back though. Do definitely want to protect my range with some strong hands, like the second nut flush draw here, and potentially deuce bets from loose aggressive opponents in the streets going forward. So it could go either way. I decide to check it back in this instance, so we're still 3 ways to a turn, which is the 2 of diamonds. Let's go. We turn the king high flush, and the straddle goes ahead and bets out 50. Leon folds, and I really do consider raising here just to be able to pot against any worse flush draw. Maybe some hands like pocket sevens and pocket eights will call a raise. The problem though is if they do start to fold those hands, then I'm really only getting value from worse flushes and 2x. Probably going to get more value from those hands anyway on the river, no matter what it is. And solvers usually like to play turn flushes and river flushes, like more so on the passive side, just because the equities are going to run pretty close when both of you have a lot of nut flush draws in your range. So I decided to take a bit more of a balanced approach per se, and just throw in the call here. So we're still heads up to the river, which is the 6 of clubs. Definitely not the best river in the world. The opponent tanks maybe like 5 seconds before checking it over to me. Now, definitely going to go ahead and value bet here. Somewhat of an interesting sizing decision. I prefer using the larger size though. I do think if my opponent had a 6 or a deuce, they will probably just go ahead and bet on the river. So I go ahead and make a 150. Then my opponent is in the tank, and they're in the tank probably a good solid 30 seconds or so. They start talking to themselves, and they're saying like, it doesn't really make sense. Either you have a deuce or a bluff. You know, it doesn't look like you have anything. And eventually they land on a call. They throw in the call. I show my king 9 of diamonds, and they end up mucking. So finally we win a hand in this session. Let's go. Next hand, we're kicking off the 5-5-10, and there's 30 on the button bounty, but I'm in the cutoff with 7 deuce of clubs. Probably should mention before I open this hand that we are playing the 7 deuce game. So if I do win this hand, I end up collecting 15 from all the other 7 players in the game. So I go ahead and raise it up to 25, and then Panda's back and he calls on the button, as does G-Man in the straddle. So we're 3 ways to a flop of ace king 9 with 2 spades and 1 club. G-Man goes ahead and checks it over to me, and I definitely want to c-bet here, looking to take the pot down now. And even if I do get called out backdoor clubs at least, plus very easy for me to represent all the strong hands on this board. So I go ahead and make it 25, and then Panda folds on the button and G-Man calls in the straddle. So we're still heads up to a turn, which is the 7 of diamonds. Straddle checks it over to me again, and I do like that I have showdown value here, but I really want to keep bluffing. I have the nut hand to be bluffing with just because of the extra EV when I do win the 7 deuce bounty. And even if I get called by ace jack or ace 10, I still do have like equity to improve to either 2 pair or trips. So I go ahead and bet 150, and then the opponent pretty much folds straight away. And he's like, oh, do you have ace king? What do you have? What do you have? And I show the 7 deuce. Let's go. So not only do I win 135, an extra 105. Let's go. Next hand is just a straight 5-5, and the button bounty has already ended. Not sure why, but who cares, because I'm in the low jack with my favourite hand in all of poker. I go ahead and raise pocket aces up to 15. Then Panda calls in the hijack. Then the action's round to Ben on the button, who goes ahead and 3-bets it to 45. G-Man calls in the small blind, and then the action's back round to me. Definitely going to mix in the 4-bet here. I go ahead and make it 140. Maybe I could go a bit larger in a multi-weight pot, something like 160, maybe even 170 or 180. But I made it 140, and then the action's back on Panda in the hijack, and he announces, I haven't even looked at my hand before, back raise 5 betting 500. Okay, this is good news when we have aces, then the button folds, the small blind folds. The action's back on me. I started with about 1.6k and my opponent very heavily covers that. So I really do think if they didn't look at their hands, they'll probably just shrug and call off because they're looking to gamble. It's a slam dunk spot to go all in here. And honestly, I expect to get called a lot, which is pretty exciting considering this is a very, very big pot. I go ahead and rip it all in for 1.6k, and then my opponent's like, oh yeah, I call, like it's no big deal. I turn over my pocket aces, they show queen 10 offsuit. They ask me if I want to run it once or twice. Let's just go at one time for the vlog. Great start on the 7 high board, and let's go. The opponent is absolutely dead on the 8 of diamonds turn. Holy crap, we just raked in a 3.3k pot at a 5-5 game against an opponent who didn't even look at their hand before calling a 1.6k shove. I'm absolutely blessed in life. Remind me of this hand next time I want to complain about a bad beat. Next hand is 5-5-10 and Leon limps under the gun. Then I'm in the hijack with pocket tens. I go ahead and ISO raise it to 50 and I get no less than 5 different callers. So we're 6 ways to a flop of 6-5-3 with 2 clubs. The action checks to me and I just go ahead and check it here. Really don't like betting into 5 people ever, but particularly on a board where the opponents are going to have a lot of nut straights and I have literally a 0. So I go ahead and check it over to the opponents and then it ends up checking all the way through. So we're still 6 different ways to a turn, which is the 10 of diamonds. Hey, that's a pretty good turn card for us. We turn top set and there's backdoor diamonds out there. And then the straddle goes ahead and bets 125 under the gun. Leon calls and the action's on me. And I do consider just calling here. Still concerned that the straddle could have a straight, being that I think bet calling with 7-4 suited for sure, but maybe even 7-4 offsuit when they're getting such a good price to go 6 ways. So bit concerned they could have a straight, but really still think I have to raise here. I can get called by combo draws, by the 2 pairs. Like if they can have 7-4 offsuit, they can also have 6-5 offsuit, right? So there's a lot of hands I can get value from with a raise. So I go ahead and make a 420 dude, and then the action folds back to the straddle, who tanks a little bit before folding, and then Leon folds as well. So we end up raking in this pot. Next hand's a 5-5-10 and Ryan opens under the gun for 30. Then the loose aggressive G-man 3-bets the hijack to 100. Then Liam calls on the button and the action's on my big blind with ace-king offsuit. Slam dunk 4-bet spot here in my opinion. I go ahead and make it 330 and then under the gun folds, the hijack folds, and the button actually calls here. Now when the button calls, I think they're going to have a very condensed range. I think it's going to have a lot of stuff like pocket 9s, pocket 10s, pocket jacks, probably pocket queens, and maybe potentially the other combinations of ace king. Could be a few like suited broadways or potentially 7 deuce. So we're heads up to a flop of 7-7 deuce with 2 spades. I've talked about it on the vlog before when you do 4-bet that it is good to have a range bet just because you're going to have a stronger range of hands than your opponents. Like I'm going to have all the pocket aces and pocket kings, whilst the opponent is probably going to have a lot less combinations of those. So I go ahead and c-bet 200. Basically just trying to deny equity to overcard hands that have equity against us. And then the opponent throws in the call. So we're still heads up to a turn, which is the 8 of spades. Awful turn. Some of those suited broadways now have a flush and pocket 10s, pocket jacks. No super scary card for them. I'm going to have a few nut flushes in my range, but I really think those hands will call when there's not an ace or a king out there. So I just go ahead and check it over to the opponent. Then they go ahead and bet 425, and I have a pretty easy fold here with ace king, no spade. So the opponent ends up raking in this pot. They later told me that they had king, queen of spades. So pretty happy we ended up folding the ace high on the turn. Next hand, the double straddle's on. We're playing a bit of 5-5, 10, 20. Let's go. Leon limps the cutoff, and then I'm on the button with ace-queen offsuit. I go ahead and ISO raise it to 100. Then the action's on Panda in the small blind, and he goes ahead and 3-bets it to 250. The action folds back to me, and I heavily consider 4-betting here. I think ace-queen offsuit is way ahead of Panda's small blind 3-betting range. But this is actually a good spot to have ace-queen in your defend range in position, just because I think Panda's going to be 3-betting a lot of worse ace-x hands. Like even ace-2 offsuit, ace-6 suited, stuff like that. I think it's pretty likely they're going to 3-bet in this dynamic. So we can just call, and it just means we're going to call the Panda on a lot of different runouts and gives us some hand with some showdown value on most runouts with ace-high. So pretty good spot to defend my range in my opinion. So I throw in the call, and then we're heads up to a flop of ace 9-5 with 2 spades. Panda goes ahead and c-bets 425, so pretty much we're loving this news. Like I said, I think the opponent has a bunch of worse ace-x hands, but they definitely could have ace-5, ace-9, and ace-king, so can't go ahead and raise for value or anything just yet. So I throw in the call, and then we're off to a turn, which is the 4 of diamonds. Panda goes ahead and keeps betting at it. He goes ahead and makes it 1,125. They only have about 1,500 behind after the flop bet, so we're either going all in or folding here. So the pot odds are a bit different. I sort of do it with the effective stack, so I'm getting about 2 to 1 on a call here. So is ace queen good 33% of the time here? I think absolutely yes. Occasionally we're going to lose to ace 9, ace 5, and ace 4, and ace king of course, but a bunch of the time they're going to have ace queen themselves, ace jack themselves, ace 10 themselves, or they're just randomly bluffing with like king jack or jack 10 or something. So great spot to go with it in my opinion. I rip it all in for about 1.5 thousand, and then Panda snap calls. Was not loving that snap call, but then they show ace 7 of spades, so it makes sense they would snap call with top pair and the nut flush. Then they ask if we can run it 2 times. That's fine with me, and we got the live runouts there for you. First river, 10 of diamonds, let's go. That's good for us. We hold on that one. No spade on 10 of spades on the second board. So we end up chopping a 4.5k pot against Panda. GG. So I wasn't involved in this next hand, but Panda had been up to his old tricks like he did in the previous game where he'd started moving all in before the cards were even dealt. And this time when he moved all in, Ryan woke up in the straddle with pocket tens and called a 1.1k a shove. And then Panda ended up having king 10 offsuit, so great spot for Ryan. And we got the live run out, and you can see Ryan holds on an 8 high board for a 2.2k pot. Damn, I wish I woke up with pocket tens there instead of Ryan. So there you go, those were the most interesting hands that I played throughout the session. After Ryan stacked Panda in that last hand, the game just ended. I think everyone had had enough, and we ended up playing about 5 hours. But in terms of how I feel about my play this session, I'm going to give myself a B grade. I do like most of the decisions I made here. I thought I was pretty patient in waiting for a good spot to get my money in good, but potentially a bit too passive in certain spots, like when I turned the flush against G-Man. Could have potentially raised it up on the turn, and yeah, maybe playing it more passive got me paid off on the river, but maybe I could have just got a bigger bet paid off, you know, if I raised the turn. So yeah, maybe a bit passive on that one, and could look to mix in a bit of aggression next time I play poker. So can't quite go to the A grade. Got to give myself a B today.
Okay, so it's about 1 a.m. at the moment and the game has just wrapped up. So it is a bit of an earlier finish, but that's definitely not because of a lack of action. Crazy session. I ended up buying in for 2,000 and cashing out for exactly 3,000 after I tips the dealer. So very nice round number there. Very good for one night's work, if I don't say so myself. That's going to wrap up the vlog for today. Thank you for sticking to the end. That helps my channel's analytics, and I do appreciate it. If you haven't already, hop in the comments below. Let me know what you think of these individual hand histories. But for now, I'm out of here. Peace.